Hi, it's Tiffany Lorraine, the Resilient Mother, with another episode of the Resilient Mother podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about resilient identity, really stepping into alignment with yourself and then maintaining it resiliently. Today, my guest with me is Jen Rafferty, who's with empowerededucators.com. Will you please tell us about yourself and what resilience means to you?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I started this journey to Empowered Educator not too long ago, December 2019. I was teaching music in public schools for about 15 years at that point. I had written a book, and about 2 weeks later, that after it was published, my husband at the time and I decided we were going to get a divorce. And I ended up moving out of the house with my two kids who were 5 and 7 at the time. The same weekend, the world shut down in March of 2020. It was a big weekend. And, everything that I thought I was the day before, I felt like I wasn't the day after. And I really had to sit with this and have kind of this reckoning, right, of who I was and who I wanted to be. And the more I sat with that, the more I realized there was quite a big gap. And so that fall, I decided to stay home with my kids and homeschool for what I thought would just be a semester. I started my Ph.D. in educational psychology, and I really dove deep into the research of mindset. And I was certified then in emotional intelligence. I was obsessed with cognitive neuroscience when I was teaching, and now that was part of my research with it in my degree program. And when it was time to decide whether or not to go back to teaching, my mind was telling me, yeah, obviously you're going to go back. This is what you've been wanting to do your whole life. But my body was screaming at me that there was something else. And so I submitted my resignation letter, and I was so excited. And about 4 days later, I was a hot, sobby mess on my couch thinking, what did I just do? And so it was another bit of a roller coaster. But since then, my company is gorgeous, and it is now thriving in a way that I've always knew that I could do this, but I never really had the opportunity to, or perhaps the courage or belief in myself to do this. And it reaches teachers and school leaders and parents all over the world now. And it focuses on the social and emotional well-being of all of the adults in schools. So that's the trajectory I'm on. And really, resilience kind of was a common thread throughout all of that, particularly regarding identity, because through that whole time, the person I am now is not the person that I was 2.5 years ago. And understanding that it's okay to shapeshift and change your mind is a big part of what that journey was for me.
Do you feel like you stepped more into yourself through that transition?
Oh, 100%. I think I thought I knew who I was. If you would have asked me, younger Jen, 2019, do you know who you are? I would have told you, absolutely, I knew who I was. And I think at the time, I really believed that I had to have it all together. I had to have all the answers. I was in a marriage that wasn't really healthy. I touted that, teachers were superheroes, and I really needed to believe that identity to justify all of the chaos that was going on in my life, both in and out of work. And so when COVID happened and everything was forced to slow down, I had a chance to really reevaluate everything. My values, priorities, where I wanted to spend my time, what was important to me, all of it. And that was a big piece of that, was stepping into myself, for sure.
So do you feel like in order to know your identity, you have to have a deep level of awareness, and that takes quiet and that takes calm in order to have that relationship with yourself and get to know yourself at that level?
100%. I think that there are levels of that. I don't think that you need to be a monk on top of a mountain to find yourself, right? I mean, we live here on earth in houses, in neighborhoods, with kids or not kids, or with jobs or not, what we have people that we live with, and things and life that happens. However, I think for many of us who function at a very high speed, and I was one of those people. I was terrified at slowing down because I thought if I slowed down, everything would just come crashing down behind me. And spoiler alert, it didn't. So it was actually okay. But learning how to create safety around the change of pace, to create safety around the calm, and to create safety around the peace was a really important aspect of all of this, because until the quiet felt safe, quiet was scary. Quiet was not something I was comfortable in. I needed my thoughts to go a mile a minute. So that wasn't even available to me. And so, having this deep connection with yourself is a process, takes time. You're never going to get to that spot of oneness, because then we die, right? Like, this is like a journey. This is always a journey. So, that is the work. It's
Yeah.
prioritizing knowing yourself and treating yourself like someone you love as the most important person in your life, and having a relationship with yourself is, I think, one of the biggest gifts we can give to all of the people in this world, and the has a huge impact on what we can do in this world.
Yes. I mean, we're only human. Like, it's a process that's never finished. There's always something more that we can learn. There's a new level that we can grow into, and we're always becoming something more as long as we're willing to grow and we don't stop moving. And so I think part of resilience is just honoring the struggle, honoring the journey. And I loved how you talked about creating your own safety and having kind of grace around it, and allowing the metamorphosis that lets us to become the butterfly or whatnot. And often in those things, some different metaphors for that are butterflies coming out of the cocoon, the chick coming out of the egg, the turtle going out to the sea. You can't interfere with that process, or the chick, the turtle, the butterfly doesn't gain the strength or the ability that they need to fly and to swim and to be who they are meant to be at that level. How do you think this applies to our children and helping them be resilient in their identity?
I think the best thing that we can do for our children is embody everything that you're talking about. Because what I'm finding, especially in my work, there's a lot of telling kids how to be, and
Mhm.
telling kids what they should do, and explaining our way through the growing up process. But the truth is, we don't know what we're doing. So can we just stop with that, please? Like, there's no rule book to having kids. So let's stop pretending like we know what's up, because we don't.
Right?
Right? I mean, of course, I'm talking, there are guidelines about morality and, this
Safety
idea of
and yeah,
safety. I'm
yeah,
not talking about those things. Everything else, though, it's up for debate depending on who you're talking to, right? So let's just acknowledge that first. And then realize that truly the most important thing that you can do is be the example. Because at
yes,
the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you say if you're doing the complete opposite. If you're saying, hey, I can see that you're angry, why don't you take some breaths, or go hit a pillow? But you yourself, when you get angry, push it down, and then you explode when you can't take it anymore. That's actually the message that they're receiving about how to process anger, right?
right.
So the best thing that I think that you can do for your children or anybody else in your life is embody the work. And this is one of the fundamental principles of what I do in the work that I do in this world, is the most generous thing you can do for other people is take care of yourself.
Yep. Yep, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You need to put your oxygen mask on first. Those are two phrases when talking about mothers that has come up several times. And I think you really have to know yourself and your identity in order to know when you're empty or when you're not. So I think the nature as women for most of us is to give and give and give. And some of us were raised to have a certain path in life. And a lot of that involves giving to others, whether it's your children or a husband or I think in a career, sometimes I feel like we have to give more to compete with being in the workforce with men, and it's not quite equal yet, and things that we're working towards and getting better at. But the thing that's the most important is standing in who you are and then creating resilient boundaries around it. And I think with our children, it's really important for them to know that they're evolving who they are depending on the stage of development that they're in. And there's only certain levels that we can help guide that, but we have to honor whatever their strengths are and point them out to them so that they can know that, oh, you're good at this, or oh, look at you being kind, or look at you using your manners. Like, the more that we can give the positive enforcement, the more they can feel good about who they are. And then also just that enforcement of love that you talked about, that we have to have for ourselves and our identity and who we are and where we're at right now. We have to honor that with our children and others as well. We have to meet them where they're at in their identity, but also believe that they have the potential for more. And if they can't see it for themselves, we guide them in a direction that helps them. And that's what I love about coaching is a lot about people unlocking their own inner tools and inner strength to their full potential. And maybe sometimes they don't quite see what that is yet, but it's really fun to like ask them to have a conversation with their future self. What does your future identity say to you? What does your future identity look like? And then that gives you the courage to know, oh, I can get there. And then that example piece, like, and you can go, oh, I did it. You can do it. I pursued my dreams. You can pursue your dreams. And we need more of that in the world. Instead of comparison, more of celebrating where people are resiliently as themselves and being like, good for you. That's great. That's yours. Now I'm going to go find what's mine, and just own that some things are for you and some things are not for you. And that's okay. That's part of the process. You'll attract the things that are meant for you, and the things that are not meant for you will fall away.
Yeah, 100%. And with that comparison too, comparison never feels good. It's a sure way to just suck all of the joy out of you. And when you are looking around at other people for what you think is acceptable or appropriate, or how you should be measuring up, or, whatever, fill in the blank there, not enoughness is always something that comes up with that kind of comparison. And when you're in other people's lane like that, who's in your lane? There's nobody in your lane. So when we really stay in our lane, that's when we really start to connect with ourselves. Like you said, having that idea of who we are in the future can be so powerful to really propel us forward to that alignment action, right? And another thing about that comparison that I think is really important that we often push on our kids is a lot of shoulds and supposed tos, which perpetuate a lot of these generational traumas that have happened to us, our parents, our grandparents. And we have to just stop shoulding on ourselves and our kids. And what that comes from is a lot of judgment. Oftentimes parenting from a place of shame or guilt is one of those reasons for thinking about those shoulds and supposed tos and not ever measuring up. And instead, I like to encourage people to ask more questions. Ask your kids, tell them about the word alignment and what that means. Ask them about their future self. Ask them about their intuition. Have a moment for them to look inward themselves to answer their own questions. We're so quick to jump and fix and show and tell that sometimes we need to just step back and let them figure it out themselves.
I love what you're talking about, because it's something that I lacked, was being able to build my own voice growing up. I wasn't allowed to have negative emotions or an opinion. And all that did is not let me have a real sense of my own identity. And so I think sometimes as parents, when we have a child that has a really firm decision, and sometimes it's not the answer we wanted, or it's not a very positive, sometimes we need to celebrate that, because at least they're developing their own opinion and their own identity that is not part of us, and that actually will serve them in time. Of course, correct to, stay appropriate and whatnot, but really you got to pick your battles. If they change their favorite color or their favorite food, or what they liked yesterday isn't what they like today, no big deal, as long as they're developing who they are and we support them on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is important for them to develop their own sense of self. And the truth is, you can't make your kids do anything. Like, that's another thing that's kind of, parenting is such a big bait and switch, right? It's like, have kids, it's gonna be great. And then, we get to this spot where we're perpetually exhausted and they're doing things, they're not listening, or one day they are, one day they're not. Or like you said, they're changing their minds all the time. When they're little, you finally get the pattern and the routine going, and then boom, it's like another milestone, and we have no idea who this little child is in front of us anymore. And we're constantly learning and growing. But, having that again, zooming out and a different perspective of your child's choices are not a reflection of you and your self-worth. Like that's another piece of all of this also,
Yes.
that we are constantly looking to our kids to behave and show up in a certain way because it somehow is a reflection of us. But at the end of the day, you can't make your kids do anything, right? I mean, you just can't. So what we can do is help guide and support and show and do cleanup crew when they mess up. But so much of that judgment comes from that place of that overprotection or over extending our role to help shift and guide. And if we just take a step back and let them have their own space and journey, they then start to develop their own sense of self, understand their mistakes, and then learn from themselves without much interference from us.
Yeah, love is not control. Love is allowing someone to flourish and nourish them and let them grow. And I think there's the confusion there sometimes with different parenting styles or different ways that we're raised, that there needs to be a lot of control. Well, honestly, it depends on the kid in a lot of ways and what stage of development they're in. Some kids really need that set schedule. That's how they thrive. Other kids need to be more spontaneous. Every personality is a little bit different. And it may be different than yours. And that's where there might be a bit of conflict, or you're very much the same. And then that creates some conflict as well. But the best thing to do is to honor who they are and where they're at. And then give them the tools to be resilient. Let them know it's okay to fail. Let them, it's okay to disappoint you. But the one thing that is never, ever going to change as their parent is that they have a home to come to and they have open arms of love for them, because that's the biggest thing that they can know and not have fear to go out in the world and try, is they know they have a home base and they know they have your love no matter what happens or what struggles that they have, because that's just part of life. And that's what parents and families are meant to be there for, is to be that resilient base for you of love and help you through those shifts and those changes and the surprises. And when they have their own kids, and then they appreciate you more because they understand, because they don't until they have their own, those kind of things. But that's the fun part of parenting too. That's really rewarding, is when they figure it out and they build that confidence and they have that joy, is you get to feel that yourself, because they're an extension of us. That doesn't mean that we own them or they're like a trophy to us, but we do feel what they feel. And it comes with those highs and those lows for them on the journey. They hurt, we hurt, but also when they have joy, we have that joy too. And we get to be on that journey together. So,
Yeah, 100%.
Do you have any examples of clients who have really stepped into their identity resiliently and made a big shift that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have so many examples of this, because that's truly the work that I do. Working with educators right now, it's a tough time to be a teacher. It's a tough time to be in education. And so many of the people that I work with are just tired. They're burnt out. They are feeling pressure from all angles. They are frustrated with their current circumstances. And many of them feel really stuck in their limited, let me rephrase that, their perceived limited options. And so, when someone comes to me with that, it's been really wonderful to watch their transformation from stressed, depleted, burnt out, to recognizing they have agency in every step of the way, because no matter what's going on around us, we are always 100% responsible for how we show up.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting about that is some people aren't ready to hear that, because it's really easy to blame other people and everything around you for how you're feeling right now and become this victim of your circumstance. And this is just the way it is. And I don't have a choice. How could you possibly say that I have choices? But at the end of the day, you are you, and you are responsible for how you show up. And this isn't about immediately changing outside circumstances. We're not going to be changing educational, organizational structures and systems right now that are broken. But what we are doing is changing the way that we approach these things, so we can actually solve problems in a place that comes from alignment instead of disalignment, which is where a lot of people are right now. So working through a lot of that process, I'll just give you one example of a transformative moment that several people have shared with me, something similar. there's a class that comes in after lunch that's particularly ornery, and they're kind of a little bit chatty and can't get focused to go on with this lesson. And several teachers have said to me, Jen, old me would have given them some consequences, would have sent them to the office, would have called home, would have given them extra work. But instead, I understand what's going on. I felt my nervous system be activated. I could tell that they were feeling activated too. So instead, I just shut off the lights and we did a breathing exercise together, and the rest of the class was amazing. And so what happened there was a couple of things, right? There was no loss in learning because we didn't spend a lot of time dealing with disciplinary issues. There were no disciplinary referrals because no one got sent to the office. There was this beautiful shift in energy where then all of a sudden the teacher finished the rest of her day a certain way and the students left that class a certain way that would not have happened if the old version of her would have thrown out all those consequences and raised her voice and started yelling. I mean, this new way of being is embodiment of the work, which is how we make this change for the next generation. We ourselves become the change.
And I think what you're also touching on is the way we show up. Like, we are in charge of the energy that we bring into a room and into a situation. And I think we're just beginning to really understand how much that affects other people around us. We don't have to let outside sources affect how we feel. We can stand as a pillar of resilient strength in whatever energy we want to bring to the table. And then when we do that, it can be contagious in a good way, like it was in that classroom. And then it can create more possibilities and a more positive outcome. Whereas the other way around, if we let outside circumstances dictate how we're going to show up and what energy we bring to things, we'll often shut down because we're just letting the outside forces collapse in on us. Whereas our real strength is knowing our power is inside of us, and then we emanate that out. And I think more and more people are stepping in this direction, which is also more kind of an Eastern culture way of being in alignment and energies and pillars and things that we Westerners have kind of just been like, just go, just go, just go. Like, I would say the old definition of resilience would be you push through no matter what, you get through no matter what, you burn, you don't, it doesn't matter if you burn out or whatever. No, that's not the resilience I'm talking about. I'm talking about the resilience to be your best self at all times, under all circumstances. And the more that we step into that kind of identity, the more impact we can have on everyone around us and the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of reasons for why we associate resilience with pushing through and productivity, and it's just not working. I mean, you just open your eyes and you'll see all around you that this way of life isn't working anymore. And we cannot continue to define our identity or self-worth based on how much we're doing and efforting in this world, how hard we work, how many hours we spend at the office, how much money is in our bank account. I mean, all of those markers are completely external and truly take us away from connection to ourselves and to each other. And so flipping the script about this is a really big shift and takes a lot of intention. And as you start to make changes, the people around you who are not quite there yet will certainly have something to say about it, because it can be confronting when you are saying, I'm actually going to say no to this thing because I'm prioritizing myself, because I know that my well-being is the most important thing. That can be confronting for people.
Yes. And the thing is, there's ways to honor that and be like, maybe not right now. This is not in alignment with me right now. There can be some beautiful ways to say no that don't have to come across harsh to others. Now, you can't control how somebody's going to take something or if they're going to take it personally or not, but you can do it in a way that, oh, I'd love the opportunity to work with you, or I wish that this would work at this time, or just honor their idea in some way. And then to say, just not right now, maybe we can come back to this. Or I think we need to change the language around no as well, so that it becomes you really want me at my best if I'm going to do this for you. I can't give you 100% of this right now because I have these other things lined up in my life for me to be at my best. So let's regroup and revisit this when I know I can give it to you in a way that it is going to be beneficial to both of us. And then I think it changes kind of the conversation around that, lets them stay in their identity and lets you stay in your identity. And then they can find the person who is the better fit or the better option or the other opportunity, instead of seeing it as a closed door or a stop sign.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we communicate boundaries is different for every person and every scenario. But I think, especially as women and especially as moms, we do need to step into our power and realize that no is a complete sentence, that is something that you are completely capable of saying, that if it doesn't feel good and it's not in alignment, you can simply say no. And you don't have to explain yourself all the time either, because part of this too is, well, if we just explain it away because we can like ease the blow and make this other person feel better about my decision about alignment, that's again moving into this perfectionism, people pleasing thing, where boundaries are really about honoring yourself. And what I love about having this kind of conversation is normalizing some of this language around it, because I think you're right. So, if you're like, hey, Jen, even today, right? I mean, we had like this little mix up in time, right? Where I was like, oh, Eastern time. And you're like, oh, oops, the mountain time. And like the person in between, like it just was a miscommunication, right? I could have easily said no, because and I didn't necessarily have to explain myself for that. But for me, this felt in alignment. So I was like, yes. And so especially in these kinds of situations, like, things like this happen all the time, which is why I bring this up, right? And so there's a way to just say, I this is not in alignment with me right now. We'll have to reschedule. And because you're in this work too, that's something you're like, oh, cool, because that's something that I would hope that you would share with me too. If it was like, well, can you do this now? And you said, no, actually, I can't. That's important that we start to normalize this, especially as women.
Absolutely, because we want to give. We want to be seen as caring, nurturing, as accommodating in some ways. But it comes back to that you have to have a full cup yourself. You have to honor that you don't want to pour out to the point that you're empty. You want to be overflowing. So then when you're giving, it's not even taking from your cup, because you're so full that you have more to give.
Yeah.
And beautiful ways to do that. But it comes back to honoring yourself, like you're saying, honoring yourself as a mother, as a woman, as what the things you need every day are. So I think part of your resilient identity also is part of your daily routine. What are those non-negotiables in your day, in your schedule, in your family time that are hard no's? Because once you have those in place, people can honor them easier as well, because they already know where that priority is for you too. And so it's communicating, again, those things, but it's also setting some of those things in place. And if you don't know what those are for you, that's okay. You can explore those things. There's a million different morning routines, evening routines. I think that's the other thing we get caught up in, is we think, I'm going to go buy this morning routine plan. I'm going to do it just like them, and I'm going to get that result. Maybe you need it to be a little bit different. Maybe you need to add music to it. Maybe you don't need the full hour of meditation. Maybe you can do it in 15 minutes. Like you kind of have to flip a switch and do it in a way that fits into your schedule. And like, as a busy mom like me on my own with 3 kids, I have to find things I can do in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes if I get a half an hour, or I have to be flexible and able to move things around a little bit. And I'm still perfecting that. Like, it's still a process. And I can look at other people's schedule who don't have kids or do have a husband, and it's just like, yeah, well, that is not going to work for me. I'm just going to be realistic here. There's a reason that works for them that way. And I don't beat myself up for it. I just go, okay, that didn't work. Let's go find what works. And I think we need to give every woman more permission to do that in their parenting, in their life, and the way that they decide to show up. Because we all don't need to be the Instagram, Pinterest, perfect Stanford wives, for an example, version of a woman, mother, to have worth. I think we all have worth on a very unique individual level. And that unique identity that we have that makes you, you, and makes me, me, is what we need to honor more of. Because you have gifts I don't have. I have gifts you don't have. But aren't we better together? We're not better, or no one's above or below each other. And we can collaborate in this way, being here, because we're honoring those unique and beautiful parts of each other. And I think with our children too, when we honor their unique gifts, they're more willing to collaborate. They're more willing to work with you and grow and go in that direction. And then that gives the family a more cohesive identity as a family and what your family mission statement might be about, or who you are. Because then you can say something like, well, I'm a Galloway and Galloways are always creative, or I'm a whatever your last name is. And that helps to re-solidify, hey, you're part of this family. This is what we do. This is who we are. And that makes us unique and it's cool.
Definitely. Definitely.
How do you think that applies for teachers in the classroom as well that you help or that are online?
Well, as far as a mission, I think that's, you mentioned like a family mission statement. I think it's important that people connect with the reason why they do things, particularly in their work and the impact that they're making in the world. Having a mission like that is, it's a beacon. It's this guiding light. It's a North Star. And as far as riding the storm and resilience, having some sort of mission can be really grounding in those times. During COVID, I felt lost, like many of us did. However, I had a very strong professional mission that I had created years prior, which was, I inspire people to discover their voice, which as a music teacher, that was very literal. I was at the time conducting choirs all across New York State and, presenting at conferences nationally at that point. And that's what I did. I inspired people to discover their voice. And so when COVID happened and we couldn't connect like that anymore, singing itself was very scary at the beginning. We had it was killing people, right? So, all of a sudden now the thing that was my lifeblood, my heart and my soul was now very dangerous. And we didn't know when it would be safe, if it would be safe. I remember grieving that tremendously, yet going back to this mission of, okay, well, how can I inspire people to discover their voice if I'm not in the music classroom? And that led me to a lot of really cool creative projects, including creating some online singing communities that were these beautiful global platforms where people would come and would sing together, which was gorgeous, and led me to my company really now, because I do inspire people to discover their voice. I just do it a little bit differently now. But that mission of who I am and what I do played a really big part, and still does, in my identity regarding my work in the world, for sure.
Have you found ways to keep music a part of your life, even in this new identity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've definitely had to reestablish my relationship with my music, but you can see it. My piano's behind me, my guitars are over here. I have music all around, but it is not part of my everyday like it used to be. Now it serves as more of a relaxation exercise, or if I'm feeling a certain kind of way, I'll just sit at my piano and bang out a few songs and sing at the top of my lungs. And that it kind of serves as like a self-regulation piece for me that brings me a lot of joy. But it is different. I did have to shift my relationship.
I was also a music major during COVID and had to shift with all the things that were going on. So I can very much relate to what you're saying. And I find music still has to be very much a part of my life. It's still a part of my identity. But what I'm doing with it is also different. And so I think something we need to honor along the way is, as we change, you don't lose everything when you shift or change. You don't lose. It all comes with you. All that experience, all that past, all becomes a purpose. It's all going to serve you in the best way that it can. And it comes along with you. The things you want to keep, you keep, and let it come with you. Yeah. And maybe in the future that will evolve and change too. It's fine. It's perfectly fine. So it'll be fun to see how things change and shift in the next few years as we get more comfortable. But I love the idea of what we can do online and make connections like this that I would otherwise never have been able to make. We're so much more connected as a world. I've met people from all over the world on this podcast and in meetings. And it's so beautiful to see how we all are so individually different in our cultures and the food that we like to eat and the things that we do. And even how we're embracing this new online culture and world. It's interesting to see which cultures are really into it, and the way it's brought people and collectives kind of together. Like the music people kind of got together, the personal development people got together. Like there's just all these different groups that had something in common that now are like connected in a worldwide way. And so we are more alike than we are different. Everyone's going through something. We're all transitioning or pivoting, and we all need each other. And we need to just honor the unique, resilient identity of who that person is, to let them be seen. Our children especially need to be heard and seen and met where they're at. And then we could help them resiliently grow into who they're meant to be and see what their potential is. It's such an honor to have you on here today. I love this conversation that we had. I really believe it'll serve other mothers and those listening. So thank you for those that are with us today. Jen, if they want to work with you and what you're doing, where can they reach you? Where is the best place? And do you have anything coming up that you'd like to share?
Sure. The best place is my website, which is empowerededucator.com. If you click around, you'll see some upcoming workshops, particularly this summer. And if you're a parent and you are wanting to thank your teacher, they don't need another mug. They don't need another mug. They don't need another candle. So I actually created a teacher gift for them, which is a beautiful package of some workshops based on the things that we're talking about today. And it's at empowerededucator.com/teacher gifts. And you can find it there, because let's love on the people who take care of our kids. They need love, and a mug's nice, but they've got enough.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. And if you'd like some resilient results coaching, I'm now a certified high performance coach, and I've got lots of experience in different areas to help you excel in life and step into your resilient identity. Feel free to reach out to me at the link below or find me on social media. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for being a part of the Resilient Mother podcast today.